Hi, everyone. This is Rico Figliolini, host of Peachtree Life and UrbanEBB. Appreciate you all being with us. We have this is part of a series that I've been doing with different people in public safety industry in that space. And I have a great guest today, Mike Jones out of Virginia, who's president of the Major Security Consulting and Design Company. Mike, thank you for joining me. Appreciate you
It's
being with
it's
us.
my pleasure, sir.
Oh, thank you. So before we get into this, I do want to say thank you to our sponsors who help us put these podcasts out, support the journalism we do with our magazines. So two of them, EV Remodeling Inc., here in Peachtree Corners, owned by Eli and his family. They do great remodeling work from everything from one room renovations like your kitchen or your bath to whole house remodeling or adding even a deck or other extension to your home. They've done over 260 major projects, so check them out, evremodelinginc.com. Also, if you're a brand or you're a company and you need to put your logo somewhere, there's a company out here that handles branding of that sort, and they're called Vox Populi. They are here in Peachtree Corners. They are supportive of the community, and the work they do is getting your brand out, whether it's a vehicle wrap or you're going to a trade show or you need, you know, apparel with your logo on it. Anything that you can think that you want to put your logo on, they can do it. So check them out. It's voxpopuli.com. So I appreciate their support. Now to get into our discussions today, Mike, we were talking a little bit before the show, and I was like, you have over 5 years of 5 decades of experience in the field of public safety. And you put it, well, you've been from birth in public safety since your family has been in policing. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Mike. This way we could start off in the right place.
Certainly. Having come from a law enforcement family, I'm very proud of that. I'm also come from a family that pushed education. So when I turned 18 years old, I had quite a bit of experience watching my brother, who retired just recently as a general district court judge,
Mhm.
my deceased brother Steve, who died during the line of duty for due to his work with the Virginia State Police, and he had a medical situation that caused his demise. And then, of course, myself, who started out as a deputy sheriff in Pennsylvania County, which is up near Smith Mountain Lake and near Moonshine Country. So I had quite the experience going into it. But one of the things that sets the background for me goes back to the week that I was born in 1959. My I was taken from the hospital because they did that back then when you were young, and
Mhm.
my great grandfather presented me to the family and made this statement. Of course, I didn't understand it because I was just born, but the moniker was given to me of that child will never know a stranger. And from that point forward, that is held true. If I get to meet you in person or over the video, and we talk and get along, and then you'll have a friend for life. I've found the ability to communicate is a lost art in the United States.
Mhm.
I found the ability to have meet a total stranger, and after you have a conversation, you have a total friend. And that is key in law enforcement because without conversation, so many things run off the rails so quick.
Mhm.
It's easy to misunderstand when you don't communicate or don't want to communicate. So the fact that we are all humans tied to our future on this planet we're on, communications is the utmost, most important thing in law enforcement and criminal justice and human relations.
Uh, yes, for sure. I've seen too many, with all these programs out, cops and TikTok videos, and everyone's trying to be an influencer, and you see all the crime and stuff. And sometimes just, if people would just calm down and just communicate what they need to do, I think, versus building up the tension in a scene, I think things would be so much easier.
I think
Um,
you are spot on with that because the ability to look at someone in the eye, shake their hand, and say, "Hello, my name's Mike Jones. What's yours?"
mhm. Yeah, not too many people can do that nowadays. And unfortunately, that's just I don't know if that's COVID or if that's just the way it's been going. Um, People can't seem to speak, look people in the eye, and just directly explain something that's going on. Um, you've had a lot of influence on your life, obviously, Mike. You've been in law enforcement. Give us so you were a deputy, but give us a little bit more about that resume, if you will, in short, where you've been through the process.
Certainly. Well, growing up with a family of law enforcement officers, with my dad being in charge of alcohol law enforcement, and as you well know, the Pennsylvania County area of Virginia is famous for moonshine. There's even a TV show called Moonshiners.
Yeah.
And trust me, after living in that family, if I wanted to, I can make the best moonshine in the world. But we won't. I digress. So with that, I grew up and I wanted to get my education. So I had the blessings of a sheriff who knew the value of formal education. And he allowed me to work as a part-time deputy when I wasn't in school at Virginia Commonwealth University,
Really?
where I went up all the way to ABD, and I decided I didn't want my former students critiquing my PhD, and I was 60 plus years. So I just decided I would dispense with that. So as I moved along throughout the career as a deputy sheriff, I ran into all kinds of situations,
Mhm.
murders, sexual assaults, burglaries, missing children, amazing things. One of the most amazing situations that I had happen to me as a young deputy was we had a call of a missing child who was, in those days in the 70s, they were characterized as a retarded child.
Mm.
Now they are, Monica is, they are affected or they are autistic. What happened was this child was missing for over 10 hours and we had been out looking all day and I just decided to stay along later. And it was 4 o'clock on a fog night and the fog was just everywhere. And I was coming down a hill getting ready to go in for the night when four dogs were out in the middle of the road surrounding a child. I pulled over immediately and I thought, this must be the child.
Mm.
And dogs made no effort to do anything but stand there. I went over to the child and the child came running to me and said that he's lost and that one of the things that he wanted to go see his mama. And so I put him in the car and took him back and it was a wonderful reunion. And with that reunion, everybody thanked me. I said, don't thank me, thank your dogs. And
Mm.
mother and father looked at me and said, we don't have dogs. So you talk about something that set in my mind that this child had dogs protect him, and that just showed me there's a divine moment in many things.
Wow. Yeah, I can appreciate that. That's sounds like a movie moment almost. Um, it's good to
And then,
be
of course,
inspired.
as I moved along, I left Pennsylvania County and then went to the Virginia Commonwealth University Police, where I spent my time,
Mhm.
going through the academic world and ending up with an ABD and being a professor there. I love teaching because that allows me to have a real in-depth conversation with people who want to be helpers. And even the helpers need help as they're growing up in their world. And we see that in the policing world. The other part of it is that after I left my time with the Sheriff's Department and the VCU Police,
Mhm.
I had the privilege of joining the Virginia Capitol Police, which is the oldest police department in the nation. It was established in 1618 at Jamestown, Virginia.
Wow.
And no, I didn't go back to 1618. For my retirement, they gave me a plaque of the first General Assembly meeting that had the armed public guard behind the members of the House of Burgesses,
Uh-huh.
and with the little moniker beneath it was Mike's first day at work. So humor is part of my life, but one of the things that I had the privilege, I've worked everything from homicides to threats on state and local officials to just bizarre situations, abductions, working as part of task force and teamwork. You see a lot of different things, and it's something that you always want to help others, and sometimes all it takes is quieting the combatants and saying, "Hey, wait a minute, let's talk about this.
Right.
It's not as bad as you think." I can remember working attempt suicides where people were threatening to jump off bridges.
Hmm.
And I talked with them. I got close enough not to be endangering them or myself, but I spent time talking with them. And I'll tell you the power of communication. When I was captain in charge of investigations, we had one particular case that required a lot of detail, and we suspected this person of being involved in quite a few other serious incidents.
Hmm.
And I was interviewing this person because the case originated with me, but I had to step out just briefly due to nature call.
Right.
And as I was coming back in, the person who I sent in to sit with this prisoner, he said, "Chief, you're not going to believe this, but we got several confessions from this person." And I said, "Well, what happened?" He says, "I don't know who that guy was talking to me." He said, "But all he did was talk and talk and talk. And I finally realized he wasn't going to stop until I told the truth." And so I kind of smiled and went in and shook his hand, and we solved quite a few cases. So the power of communications can be used in a multitude of ways.
You've been, because of your expansive experience, um, do you find that policing has changed over the years? I mean, it's
Policing
easy.
changes every year.
Okay.
People think that it sits static. Policing works for the people. It works for all the people, not the rich, not the poor, not the black, not the white, not the young, not the old. We are the guardians of other humans. We stand up in places where no one else will. And it's our job to be your protectors to help you. And sometimes it's tough. Sometimes you don't want to be helped.
Hmm.
Sometimes you want to be left alone. Sometimes you know you're guilty and you'll probably go to jail and you might want to fight us. But sometimes the biggest weapon we have is the ability to look somebody as an equal human in the eye and say, "Okay, we can fix this. We can get through this."
Do you think public expectations have changed, though? You know, what
Public
people expect.
expectations have all kinds of aspects to it. They think you can stop a person without having to shoot them or tackle them or all these other amazing electronic things. And they just don't understand the fact that policing is a difficult uh, human service where sometimes people just don't know how to get out of the situation they're in. And the only thing they know what to do is something bad to try to fight their way out. They don't intend to hurt us, but sometimes it just happens. And sometimes the police officers need to learn a little bit more about humanity and how it works.
Right.
So, yes, we have lots of changes with technology. We have lots of new technology. We
Mhm.
have lots of new cars. We have lots of new offenses. But nothing replaces the human aspect of a police officer going up to a person who's in crisis and saying, "Hey, what's up? How can I help you?"
Yeah.
Yes, some people try to kill you. I've had a few bullets sent my way, quite a
Really.
few over the years. And I've never had to shoot someone. I've had to lay my hands on them, but I did it as gentle as possible just to calm them down, all the while conducting a conversation. The ability for someone to reach out to a person in crisis, and a criminal is a person in crisis. They weren't that way. They weren't born that way. They became that way for a variety of reasons. You talk about society changing. We
Yeah.
have parents who thinks absenteeism is a part of raising a child. It's not. So there's changes all throughout our profession. We've got technology, but it's not all technology. We're trying to train our officers in the fact that they're humans, just like everyone is humans. But
Mhm.
sometimes we have some difficulties. So as we look for the best person who can help others, and as we try to go through the ability to talk to people and tell them they're valuable, just like the police officers are valuable,
Mhm.
and no one is better than the others. But there are times when you have to take a harder line, and that's to prevent yourself, the person who's upset, and the public from being harmed. So we're in a constant state of change, and that's one thing that policing has been a little bit behind on, is that we play catch up way too much. We
Mm.
should get in
Yeah.
front of things instead of be behind them.
Yeah. Kind of tough to do that depending on your budget constraints. or,
Correct.
or the people that get hired. So to go down that road a little bit, when we balance, when police, public safety, cities, counties have to balance budget constraints with municipal policy, with civilian privacy, hiring, there's not enough candidates to be hired for the police force in some places.
At
Maybe.
one time, I would have an average of 100 applicants that wanted to join the Virginia Capitol Police. As situations changed, as society changed, and people got in a big argument with themselves, no one wanted to be in policing anymore. We were short shifted.
Yeah.
We didn't have enough people to do it, so we worked our officers at a higher level of exhaustion, because we couldn't let you go home because there was no one left to patrol the streets. So we had to deal with a lack of things, and that made it internally difficult for us, because when you work somebody 12 or 14 hours, they're exhausted and they're
Hmm.
not at their best. But we didn't have anyone who wanted to do it. We still are running into that today, because some people just don't understand that you're a helper. Just it goes back to one of the old childhood shows with Captain Kangaroo about and Mr. Green Jeans. I know some people are probably laughing now to think I'm that old, but the fact that the fact we are all helpers for each other, and that's what a police officer is. We are helpers in various ways.
I think that's coming back around, right? So you have people that are talking about bringing back community policing. It's a nice phrase, where the police are active within the community that they are policing, being good neighbors like that. Because it seems like something's gone farther away from that. So now things want to come back a little bit, right? Um, Training's important, transparency. What do you think are the biggest issues local police forces in small cities? Let's say like Peachtree Corners even, which is about 44,000 people. Um, what do you think are the things that they need to look out for? Not that we have a police force, but if we ever did have one, what are the top issues that need to be addressed?
First off, people need to realize that police are part of the community. They live there, they go to work there, they shop at the stores there, their children go to school there. They are just like everybody else. They have
Is it,
different
is
training. It's
that
just like doctors have different training.
is that still the case, Mike, though? I mean, when you look at police forces, are they actually living in their communities that they police, or they can't afford sometimes to live in those communities even?
Well, yes, economics and housing prices do make a difference. I've known officers to drive 30 to 45 miles and just to come to the shift. You know
Right.
why they continue to drive 45 miles? Because they have that commitment to where they work. Most police officers, despite public opinion, love to do policing, and they do policing as part of the community. We view, I taught my officers, you're protectors, protectors of your community, protectors of the people, and protective of the other officers. And sometimes that protection can come hard when people are very upset. You can't very well expect them to be super kind to you when they're going through things that they can't even understand themselves. The scourge of drug abuse, the
Mm.
scourge of having to work 3 or 4 jobs, and you're just so exhausted, and You took a little drink on the way home, and all of a sudden you're weaving on the road, and the police officer stops you. The police officer did nothing wrong by doing their job, but you think they did because you've had such a bad day.
Mm,
That's why communication is getting more and more important, that we are able to actually talk to people. Not every person who commits a crime is a bad person. They're a good person who are having a bad time.
mhm.
And that type of community policing training is that you have to protect the community, but that doesn't mean that you automatically go into a mode of you have to harm someone to protect the community. Yes, there are times when lethal force and other types of force have to be used, but we train officers to de-escalate as many situations as possible. I always am a big proponent of using our first name. Hi, I'm Mike. I'm a police officer. You know, yes, you are also so and so, but you want to humanize yourself to people who are going through a stressful situation and they don't even know how to handle themselves. So that's one of the difficulties that we face, is that there's this barrier when people know that they might go to jail because they've got what's called comeback time. They
Mm.
might want to fight you. Well, they're not really fighting you, the person. They're fighting the fact that they're going to go back to a system that only knows how to put people in jail for a certain amount of time. And they don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And that's why we train everyone so hard how to communicate. We do not want to shoot people. We do not want to hurt them. We don't want to have to arrest people unless the law requires it. And when we do so, we want to do so with humanity.
Good points. Right now, probably one of the biggest things that police forces are looking at is mental health issues also. To be able to have the right people, not necessarily a police officer, or maybe a police officer with someone with them that is in that space that can, you know, handle the situation without having to arrest them necessarily. I mean, is that something that's challenging now to put into the mix?
It is so challenging now because you add drug abuse
Hmm.
and you add autism and the other spectrum disorders where people are unable or less able to communicate, and the police officer is not trained enough to say, well, what's going on with this person? And then you have two people who are desperately trying to understand each other.
Hmm.
They can't, and they get to the point where you can't let the situation go on all day, that you have to put them in custody, and that results into use of force issues, which are something we don't want to do, but we're trained to do so, not only for the protection of the community, but for the protection of the person who's going through this trauma and crisis. And we see more trauma and crisis than you can ever imagine. And that tears at the very fabric of police officers when they go home and they talk about what they had to deal with. There
Right.
are times when I've had to arrest people where I had to physically hurt them. Now, did I like that? Absolutely not. But if the person was holding a knife and the only alternative I had was shoot him or
Hmm.
hold his wrist down against the pavement, I would do that because that person didn't want to kill me. He didn't know me. But that's just a stress reaction. And we have more and more of that. You see it in the schools, you see it on school buses, you see it on the street. And compassion is a key point of that. Yes, you are trained to make arrests, you're trained to use
Right.
deadly force. But these are the challenges that we face, and they are as old as Methuselah himself. Look back at the chronicles of how things happened. Uh, People at times just can't get along, and
Yeah.
order must be maintained.
Yeah. Let's move on to a few other things. Violence in the workplace, for example, is one. I remember hearing a story from an acquaintance of mine where someone in the CEO or VP in their company had to let go an employee, and that person didn't show up the next day because he was fearful maybe there might have been some repercussions. How do you handle that? I think because the police are called into those things as well, right? Or how can a company handle workplace violence and training to make sure that, they keep the rest of their employees safe? Is there
About
something?
25% of my work is involved with workplace violence.
Okay.
Workplace violence, let's face it, let's look at what the workplace is. It's the place that you go to, that you use your skills and you get paid for it. Well, if situations get bad when the company is not making as much money and they have to lay you off, well, I worked my bottom off for 20 years and now you're laying me off. You're not taking care of me. That person has nowhere else to go with that emotion. They
Mm,
they were hoping to retire, but since they can't do that, they come back because somebody else got a job and I didn't, and they don't know how to handle what to do.
yeah.
When you're facing losing a job and being unable to support your family, that's a crisis in your life. Oftentimes, workplaces say, "Well, that's the only thing we have to do. We're profit oriented, and without profit, we're not a business."
Right.
So you have people that just don't know what to do. So many people get to the point in their life where they are just frantic because they don't have the training in what to do if they lose their job. We don't have the money to fund folks. We have some people who take advantage of the workplace and steal from it.
Mhm.
So this is, it's not going away. We try to handle it, but when you look at school shootings
Yeah.
that come back from familial things where people use violence in the family to manage conflict, and that becomes the only thing they know. I can't talk to you, so I have to attack you because you're not treating me right.
Mhm.
Police get involved, and oftentimes we have a very large fear for suicide by these folks because they know nothing else to do, and they know it's called suicide by cop. They will
Mm.
commit some type of crime that would call the police, and when the police get there, they will pull a gun on the police officer or a knife. The only way they see out of this terrible situation is that they will draw a weapon or attack a police officer, and the police officer can only retreat so far before they have to use deadly force.
Mike, are
And
you seeing more of this? Are you seeing more of a trend towards?
dramatically more.
Uh,
We've lost our kindness. We lost our inability to help people out when something happens. And
right.
just because a person gets fired or a company makes a bad decision and they can't feed their bottom line, doesn't mean anybody's bad. It's just a bad situation happened. And we don't really take care of ourselves. We need to do better about that.
Are there best practices you can recommend for schools and businesses that might be going that are concerned about things like this?
Let's start with the schools. When we had Columbine and all the other school
Yeah.
shootings, which were horrible, there was no training in how to handle this. They called the police. The police would call the SWAT team, and when you look at Columbine, it took them well over an hour to respond, which that one case changed the entire paradigm for responding to school shootings.
Mm.
It also changed the design of schools. I do a lot of school design
Oh, yeah.
classroom to prevent active shooters. The other thing is determining who these people are suffering. Every school shooter that I've evaluated, and I've evaluated every school shooting as part of my research as to what happened and why.
Mm.
Well, there's a lack of connection between the shooter and their family, their friends, their teachers. They don't know what to do, but shooting is the only way out.
Mm.
And that's a pity. So now you have school resource officers who develop amazing friendships with children who are struggling, and they go to them. So it's not hopeless, but we still have a lot of digging to do on this mountain.
It's interesting there. I just saw something, I just saw a news thing about a company that is using essentially Ukrainian strategies with drones to be able to police schools. that every school should have their own drone system because it'll probably be faster to be able to take care of a situation. That's a lot of money to be able to start investing. It's like almost like the way that they started doing metal detectors in New York City at one point when I was a kid, even. Instead of investing the money in counselors that would probably treat some of these, that would see some of these situations before they arise. There's all this technology out there that some people think will make it easier or less violent out there. I mean, do you see the use of that becoming more prevalent as a choice?
Technology has its use. For example, drones, excuse me, drones are excellent in terms of watching a crowd or observing a situation. You'll see football games where school divisions, school police have drones and they fly over the crowd
Hmm.
so they can see someone in the parking lot who might be loading a weapon. So it's a force multiplier in the fact that it is a tool. It is not a panacea. When the person is doing something like that, these no situation happens without warning signals.
Hmm.
And oftentimes we're too busy being busy that we fail to see even the most small of signs that say we need to do something.
Yeah.
And when we do the research on school shootings, that there were multiple warning signs. Everybody remembers the bully who said something to them or said something wrong to them,
Hmm.
and they felt bad about themselves. And they do things, and now what we're doing is we're taking a behavioral science approach. Let's see if we can stop this with school resource officers, with teachers, with parents. We truly are a village when it comes to where we live, and everybody has responsibility of playing the role.
Hmm.
And a lot of times parents say, I can't do anything with my child.
Yes.
They're saying that not because they want to get rid of their child, but they just don't have the training.
Yeah.
They don't know what happened. And with mental health issues that they have, with substance abuse
Hmm.
and alcohol, that's a real demon that we're fighting. And
Yeah.
those demons aren't going away fast enough.
I can see that being, yeah, it's an investment, right? To into the youth that we have, into children, to invest time when they're younger, right? Elementary school level. Middle school is a crisis point for a lot of kids, right? Because of hormonal changes and stuff. By the time they get to high school, they might already be set with certain things, right? Based on what's going on at home, in the school, bullying, ongoing stuff like that.
I would challenge you a little bit on saying things are set. Human beings aren't set. Human beings are modified. I've dealt
Good
with
point.
lots of people in crisis,
Yeah.
and some who wanted to kill me, some who were holding a gun and pointed it at me. And you're very careful about how you do this, but use of force is not step one. Calling somebody by their name is so very important.
Hmm.
AU is not a name.
Yeah.
It's just like my officers. I said, look, identify yourself as, hi, I'm Mike Jones. I'm a police officer.
Hmm.
You don't always have to say, well, call me officer. Everybody knows you're an officer because you're in uniform or you
Right.
showed a badge. So it's a collectiveness that we need to do in our world, where we need to get the parents involved. When we find, as a police officer, and we see a kid who's beginning to drift down the road of problems,
Hmm.
that's when you stop by the parents' house and say, do you know that your child was out at 1 a.m. last night?
Mm.
No, I didn't. And that's where the true community policing comes in. So every situation doesn't have to be handled by an arrest. We are truly part of a village. And when someone, I just think of the cases that I've dealt with where kids were really good kids,
Hmm.
but they just couldn't do anything.
Let me ask you something, Mike. The when you deal with, let's say, a county, I'm going to take an example of ours, right? Where it's almost 1 million people in this county. And you look at local police force of a city, and there's several cities like Norcross, City of Norcross here, City of Duluth, I think, City of Beaufort, they have their own police department, their own small police department, right? They handle their
Right.
city only. Do you find, is there a measurable difference in having a police department in a city, a small city, versus a larger county-wide um, police force? How would that, I'm going to put you in a spot. How would that differ? Would that be better? Would that be worse? How would that look like from your experience?
From my experience for being chief in 5 departments, I would go in and I would change the way how we do policing. Number one, to my officers, when I took over as chief, I would say, you now own a community. It's your job to help fix this community. It's your job to help work with this community. And it's your job to understand that you're dealing with human beings. I don't want cowboys. Uh, I
Right.
don't want soldiers. So one of the things, there's a beautiful little town in Northern Virginia called Purcellville.
Hmm.
It's a medium-sized town, but it's one of the best departments I've ever seen in terms of community policing and doing their job. One officer, I was helping them with some issues they had about community policing, and one of the officers was very, very proud of the fact that he was walking a beat at night and he looked at the hardware store and saw that there was a light on in the attic. So rather than rushing upstairs with the gun drawn, he called the owner and said, "Hey, didn't that used to be an apartment?" And the old business owner said, "Oh, I forgot to tell you guys, somebody's leasing that space. Everything's great." And that's the example of, by having your own police department, you are truly part of that town. You're not a separate entity. When you're part of the state police, they have a different mission, and it's a wonderful mission, and they always help officers. But when you protect a town, you become part of that town. You talk to people, and that is the best weapon and the best tool that police officers have, is the ability to talk to people and find out what's going on, because everyone without fail wants and needs to be heard. And oftentimes that doesn't happen when you have a strictly enforcement based police officer. It's about putting people in jail and getting numbers. So, for example, when you have a police department that's dedicated to your town, they become the guardians. People used to hate that term, oh, they're guards. No, a guardian is someone who protects. When you
Right.
put that badge and uniform on at night, you are protecting that community. You're looking at anomalies, you're looking at things that are out of place, and you also get to know the people there. It's good for me. People, I said, call me Mike. I might be chief, but my name is Mike.
Right.
And it's wonderful riding through town and with the window down, and they say, "Hey, Mike, how are you doing?" And I'll stop and pull over and say, "What you up to?" So, the humanity of all of us, it's not hopeless. We're not at the end of the world,
No.
but situations that we have where police officers are an integral part of the community are some of the safest and most humane places you can find.
Cool. We've been talking to Mike. I'm sorry. We've been talking to Mike Jones and about policing, about policy, about being good to our people, being guardians. Uh, we've spent a little bit of time discussing other options, other things like public safety and active shooting and workplace violence. Is there something, now that we're at the end of our interview, is there something you want to say that we haven't touched upon that you want to share with us? Or
I
share
would
with
like I would like to share this with you. Number one, as a police officer, it's my duty to help you.
Mhm.
As a citizen, it's your duty to help me. We, not them, we live in the community. We should be friends. We should be acquainted. I've had people come to me and say, "My son's not acting right." Well, I'm not a child psychologist. but they felt comfortable enough to come to me because they didn't know what to do. When you have a beautiful community, the police officers are part of that fabric. They're part of the threads of that community.
Mm-hmm.
They're the ones that are out there at 1 o'clock in the morning when you're just so upset at your son, you just want to shake him if he ever comes back home. So treat us as police officers who we are, people who got into this profession because we wanted to be a helper. Yes, there are officers who are bad, but people like me get rid of officers like that. But I want you to be people like you and help us to be better so we can help you to be better. We have first names.
Right.
Let's be part of that. Let's be part of the community policing effort that says we all live here.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mike. Mike Jones, president of Major Security Consulting and Design out of Virginia. Appreciate you joining me and talking about policing today. Thank you, Mike.
It's my pleasure, sir.
Hang in there with me. One quick say again, thank you to EV Remodeling Inc. and to Vox Populi being sponsors of our podcast and our journalism. Appreciate you all. To find out a little bit more about Mike Jones and his company, the links will be in the show notes. If you have any comments, there'll be contact information. You can reach out to Mike and ask him directly. We do appreciate your reviews, depending where you see this, whether it's on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or if you're listening through iHeartRadio or Spotify or any of the others. Leave a review and let us know if there's anything else we could do different. Appreciate it. Thank you all.